You've just tuned into InnoStation, where the latest and hottest topics are always on air. I'm your host, Cami, and each episode will be serving up some heat with fun chats, fire insights, and special guest appearances with a couple of surprises along the way. Now, we're still in the month of love, and this is a time when relationships come under a bit of a spotlight. But most of us don't really know what actually makes relationships thrive. And that's evident in like a lot of the conversations that you will see online, perhaps in person as well. So we have Marizanne Naested joining us today. She's a relationship and sexuality counselor who will break down her 7 key principles of successful relationships. From bedroom to boardroom, we'll explore how the same foundations that support a healthy romantic relationship and sex life can also lead to better outcomes in the professional arena. Marizanne, welcome to InnoStation.
Thank you, Cami, for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now, I think to start us off, let's have you let us know who you are and what fuels your inner fire.
Hi, I'm Marizanne Naested from Johannesburg. I come from originally quite an academic background. I have an honors in communications as well, and now I'm about to graduate with my honors in sexuality. I have done a number of short courses as well through the years of things that interested me in terms of upbuilding people, from exercise science, group exercise fitness, and counseling children. So in general, I'm someone that enjoys uplifting people and being part of them becoming what they want to become, the best of what they want to become. I've had over 17 years of experience in working in corporates.
Mhm.
So I'm now venturing over into my own counseling practice to focus on what really makes a difference in people's lives and to be present for my 2 boys and my family.
Amazing, Marizanne. And is this new path something that you've always wanted to do, or is it something that you sort of found along the way?
Yeah, I've always wanted to, but I've for the last 4.5 years really actively worked towards it very hard. Yeah.
I love that. Love that. Now, you did mention that you are graduating this year. Congratulations. Now, you've put together 7 key principles that make an awesome and stable relationship, and we want to get into that. But I think first, let's start off with you giving us a basis for what you've rooted these 7 principles in, and then we can sort of go through each one.
Right. So when we started planning our chat, we spoke about, wow, what is a healthy sex life? What is a healthy relationship? And how does that speak to healthy relationships in business? Now, myself, being someone that focuses on sexuality and relationship counseling, but also having a big leg of that be somatic trauma release work.
Mm-hmm.
I have to mention up front that trauma affects so much of how we communicate.
Yeah.
And a lot of how we communicate gets affected or skewed or agitated by previous traumas that have affected us. So then I thought, once you told me, right, what's those alignments between what creates a healthy sex life? And for me, that means a healthy relationship.
Yeah.
And what creates healthy relationships in the work environment. And I looked at it and I found there's the 10 things you have to always do regardless, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll focus on 7 specific extra deeper principles that are focused for today. But whenever we talk about a healthy relationship, we need to remember the first 10. There has to be emotional safety and trust. So the partners have to feel secure, respected, and emotionally safe. There has to be open, compassionate communication and active listening.
Yeah.
That has to be there. Otherwise, you're going to have breakdowns that you'll pay for later. There has to be mutual respect and boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be consistency and reliability for a relationship to be emotionally safe. There has to be constructive conflict resolution and problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have to have a level of adaptability, flexibility, growth. It can't just be stagnant.
Yeah.
We have to have emotional intelligence and empathy. There has to be a value exchange or reciprocity of some level. There has to be shared goals and vision alignment. And there has to be celebrating successes or acknowledgement of successes.
Yeah.
For me, that is the bread and butter. So we can't talk deeper about what else and what we have to remember. So everything in terms of the 7 that I'm going to mention, assume that the first 10 are in place.
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
We can't go next. We can't say only the 7 make
Yeah.
a successful relationship in personal and in business, because it needs to first be underpinned by the 10 that I'm mentioning beforehand. Right.
Yeah, and I think that was a good thing to note, that like you can't the 7 are an add-on, not you need the foundation of the 10. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that.
So then you wanted me to just name the 7 first to say, okay, what are the 7 deeper principles if we go under the surface of relationship management? So what are the more psychological and strategic aspects in personal and corporate life that I'm going to focus on today? Energy management over time, unspoken agreements and psychological contracts. Thirdly, controlled vulnerability and strategic authenticity. 4th, the power of absence and scarcity, which links to number 5, the paradox of independence and interdependence. And then 6, narrative control or narratives, and then perceptions management. And 7, the law of diminishing emotional returns.
Those
a
all sound
lot of
awesome.
fun chats around that.
Yes, those sound incredible. So let's get into like each one now. Let's break it down.
So energy management over time, right? When I'm in a personal relationship, it's not about how much energy I'm investing. It's about whether I'm truly present. Am I giving quality attention? Is there quality engagement, connection? It can include conflict. But in the age of phones, where we're always seeking more excitement or soothing from our device, we need to look at how much can I face the discomfort of being in the now?
Yeah.
Which is important for our growth and our learning, but also important for us to truly, truly connect with someone. So much of our relationship is being had via devices or being interrupted via devices. And the same goes for in a corporate, to be honest. But let's take it at a company level or at a business level, at a bigger level, not just employees being on their phones often and not necessarily being able to concentrate on what they're doing, or having a lot of interruptions. Now there's a Teams message, now there's an email, now there's a sudden someone walking in, because you don't have offices half the time, you have open plan. So there's a lot of interruption and you struggle to be truly present for what you're doing. But a step further, companies often obsess over time efficiency, but the real success comes from managing energy, motivating employees, ensuring meaningful engagement, and creating an intentional top-down culture. So I'm saying, in an age of AI, let's not get into a tiz about little things we have to do. Surely AI can do some of that for us, so we can really focus on the big picture and what we're trying to create.
Yeah, and I think that is actually very important, because I think we get so caught up on like the small things, and it's like, put people where they can deliver the most value. And I think it's the same in relationships as well. Like everybody's always like, oh, spend more time with me, spend more time with me. But it's like, if the person you're with doesn't have the bandwidth right then to spend that time with you, then it's not really quality time. They're kind of just there. And that doesn't really satisfy like the need that you had in the first place. So I think that's a really good one.
Yes, truly allowing connection. I was speaking to a cool colleague of mine the other day, and he was too nervous to tell his girlfriend that the sneakers she bought him for her birthday, for his birthday, was the right ones that he liked or didn't like, and so he wasn't that into it. And instead of opening up to say, let's make this a point of getting to know each other, let's venture towards connection, a person would rather go, oh, that's nice, and then move on. But then you haven't had the chance to truly connect. You
True.
didn't truly connect with that person. She
Yeah.
was begging for connection. She made effort.
Right.
So yeah.
And she might buy you the same sneakers next year. Then what?
So yeah, energy
Yeah.
management over time management. It's not just about how much time we spend together. It's, are we really investing energy?
Yes. Yeah.
Secondly, unspoken agreements and psychological contracts was something I wanted to hone in on. So in our personal relationship, in every relationship, there's some unspoken expectations. You'll be there for me when I need you, or we support each other without asking, or certain habits that you're going to have within the relationship or change once we get married or not change once we get married. So breaking these unstated contracts can cause tension and lead to conflict. So we need to communicate, to clarify, and we've got to consider that goes even into our sexual scripts.
Yeah.
Even what we're expecting, how we think things will progress, what's normal and not normal.
Yes.
So we need to communicate deeply about those psychological contracts or unspoken agreements that we think we've got. Whether it be a life goal, a core belief, a relationship expectation, we need to align them for long-term compatibility. And we will, as the relationship develops, we'll get more and more aligned. From a business perspective, employees and clients are also coming in with implicit expectations.
Yes.
And if a company hires someone under an impression that there's this great work culture, but then treats them kind of poorly, and they start seeing the culture is not that great, it violates an unspoken agreement, and they're going to react to it. So we got to manage these invisible contracts with proper communication, proper initiation, and think about what's relevant for each generation. We've got a newer generation of employees coming in, and you've got to have your office a lot more relevant for them to say, why must I be here? Why can I not just work from home or the restaurant or some other spot with Wi-Fi?
Yes.
Why must I be here? Give me relevant. So again, that might be an invisible contract or an unspoken agreement that someone new comes in with, or someone that comes from a company that's had a lot of work from home and then coming into a company where there's a bigger expectation to be at the office. Those things need to be clarified.
Yeah, definitely. So Marizanne, what happens if, like, because these contracts are not like on paper and you don't have a voice recording of like someone promising you this thing, what do you do then when there's a breach in like this agreement, in this unseen, unspoken agreement?
Well, this is where communication comes in, doesn't it? So we need to first acknowledge our feelings and be able to say, this is how I'm feeling. We need to clarify expectations and communicate openly about what those are from both sides, right? Both sides. This is how I'm feeling about the situation. This is my expectation. And let's be quite frank about this.
Yeah.
And then listen to each other's perspectives. Listening is very important in communication. And find the way forward together. Within that, though, we've got to practice self-compassion and create a really safe space for the conversation. Those would be my guidelines on that.
I think those are really good, and I think they work out really well both in personal relationships and in the workspace, because I think it is important to sort of communicate, I think even out the gate, like what you expect. I think oftentimes these unspoken agreements sort of come up because we just get into the flow of things and this is just how we do things. But then it's like the same way we didn't have a conversation about this is what we're doing, is the same way like one of us can just stop showing up and then it's like you're upset, but it's like no, because it wasn't like a thing that was established. So communication really is important.
And remembering that it is a relationship. Let's never lose sight of that, because we're in an age and a culture in which we can go, oh, well, that doesn't work for me, goodbye.
Yeah, yes.
And you can't have a long-term relationship, whether it be in business, whether it be at home. You can't have a long-term relationship if you're just going to say, okay, that doesn't work for me, bye.
That is very true.
Go and say, right, I'm dealing with people. People are not products.
Mm-hmm.
I can't just just shove it aside and find an upgrade.
Yes,
I've got to work with what I've got, and I've got to, as constructively as possible, work with what I've got.
that is very true. Now, Marizanne, take us into your third point, your third key principle.
Right. Third principle, controlled vulnerability and strategic authenticity.
Yes.
So from a personal perspective, being vulnerable definitely deepens connections. But there is such a thing as oversharing or exposing too much too soon, and that can backfire. So we need to know when and how much to share, because flooding can lead to stonewalling. And stonewalling means your husband gets home and you start telling him everything that was terrible about your day, and he just goes, he closes up and he hardly communicates during the dinner. He's just so overwhelmed with how much more might come at him after a long day. Clearly, I'm a culprit sometimes, right? I know that from personal experience, but that is what can happen in a lot of relationships.
That is true.
Don't flood to the point of stonewalling.
Yeah. Now, you spoke about controlled vulnerability, right? And I think it makes sense within like a professional setting, because you can't necessarily show up as like your full emotional self in that setting. But I think in a relationship, it sounds a bit odd, because you often hear that like vulnerability, and you just say to yourself, like, vulnerability is the thing that sort of builds stronger connections, right? So what is controlled vulnerability? Like, what does that actually mean?
Right. So you're right. We know in corporates why, or in business, why it's important, because brands and leaders who show controlled vulnerability and admit to their mistakes and share their struggles and they're authentic, they can win loyalty.
Yeah.
To a point. If they do it too often and without purpose, they can start seeming weak and manipulative. Even in our personal life, that guy that comes and it starts being like manipulative, how much there is, this vulnerability about themselves.
Yeah.
But controlled vulnerability really means bringing out your vulnerability when it is the right, safe environment. Not all the time. When it is right and safe, when I can see my husband's had all his dinner and he's calm, the kids have gone to bed, then I tell him, I want to tell you about this thing that happened today. Are you ready to receive what I'm going to share with you? You don't have to hold space for me. You don't have to think of a solution. I want to share it with you. It's a better time for me to be really vulnerable. And then strategic authenticity, what is that? It's being genuine and true to yourself, but mindful of how, when, and where you express the authenticity.
Yes.
So balancing honesty and emotional intelligence. Not reckless with oversharing, because timing and context is key.
It is very important, yes. And I like that strategic authenticity, because I think a thing that you will hear a lot is people will say like, that's just how I am, or I should be able to be myself like everywhere. And it's like, yeah, but which part of you can't bring every part of yourself to every party. There has to be like you need to move a certain way in certain environments, in certain rooms, like code switching, right? It's important. So sure, nobody's trying to put a bar on you being yourself. It's just about knowing, as you said, when and where. Yeah.
Read the room. Which part of myself do I want to bring out in this room
right now? Let's go into your fourth point.
The power of absence and scarcity. I'm about to talk about the two that's been the hardest for me in my personal relationships. So in terms of personal relationships, sometimes stepping back does in fact make the heart grow fonder. It's not ghosting someone entirely or disappearing for 4 days, but it is stepping back and giving someone else a chance to come closer.
Yeah.
People often appreciate and value things when it's not constantly available. So that's one of the things I wanted to talk about on the personal side. In corporate, of course, a brand, a product, a leader that's always on can lose their impact. Sometimes scarcity, exclusivity, and a bit of strategic pauses can cause demand and increase perceived value. We've seen that a few times in South Africa with certain products going off the market and then coming back on, and people just jumping right on because they really missed that product. Would you like me to go on to number 4?
Yes.
Yes.
I thought you had more
I was
to say.
actually thinking myself about an example of
Yeah.
specifically a product, not knowing whether I could mention one or not. So I thought, oh, stop. Think about this again.
Brand names. But I think this is a conversation that has also been going on online. In a lot of like these self-proclaimed dating coaches online will say like you need to be unavailable a little bit. You need to be a little bit aloof so that they feel like, you know, you're not always there. So they're vying for your attention and they're vying for your, and it's a bit of a more like dark psychology way of approaching that principle. But I think it is that like absence makes the heart go fonder, and people want more of what they get a taste of versus just being flooded with the whole plate and eat until you're stuffed, you know?
Yeah, but I'm going to help you. Point 5, it's going to help you about, but what do I do while I'm waiting?
Yes.
Because that's going to be the thing. Because what I'm suggesting in number 4 sounds like acting and playing, right? Sounds like, oh, I must look like I'm not available. Oh, must I reply now? Da, da, da. It brings out that feeling, but I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
Point number 5 will clarify, because here we go into the paradox of independence and interdependence in relationships. And I'm going to touch here on differentiation and how important that is. And I think if we look at differentiation, it's going to help tell us, well, what am I doing while I'm waiting? You're working on yourself, you're growing, you're focusing on you.
Yes.
Right? You're not waiting. You're growing you. So it is, and in the healthiest relationships, there's a balance between independence and connection. If one person is too dependent, it creates pressure. If they're too dependent, it creates that pressure. If they're too independent, it creates distance. So strong relationships thrive where both parties bring value into the relationship without losing themselves.
Yes.
David Schnark's book, Passionate Marriage, talks about differentiation. And this was game changer when I learned more and more about differentiation, where you might have mutual growth. Both of you have growth in your own world, but shared values. And it's so important to still work on your own growth. And that's why I wanted to bring up this independence, interdependence, and differentiation today. Because even in a companies that foster employee autonomy while maintaining a strong collaborative culture perform best. Likewise, businesses that partner with others rather than trying to do everything alone, they create more resilient, scalable models. So if you come in and you're only going to do what you do on a daily basis and not work on yourself in your own time, you're going to be adding less and less value and something special for the company. You're just going to become a product of them. And they originally brought you in because you brought in something different. Some of your uniqueness made them stronger. And I'm saying, hold on to some of that. Keep differentiating, keep growing, keep still having your independence, but there has to be shared values.
Yeah. And
you
I think
go on your own mission the whole time. Do it within the circle.
Yes. And I think it's very much like a relationship between an avoidant and anxiously attached person. And that could be like a relationship between, like you're saying, an employee that is very comfortable with just how things are and somebody who wants to grow. I think that sort of dynamic can also breed resentment in the person that actually has the desire to grow, but because they feel boxed in, don't they? It feels very much like when the avoidant partner is like, oh, don't do this, I don't want to do too much, then the anxious partner gets a little bit more resentful because it's like, well, what's happening here? Why are you never? But the other person is also resentful because why are you always? And I think even in an organization, it's I want to grow. Why must we always, or why must we always be doing things together? Why must we always be grouped in? And the organization is also like, hey, why are you not innovating? Why are you not more creative? Why are you not more? So I think, it's crazy how that works actually, because you would think showing up all the time would be the solution.
Yeah, it's really a tricky one because you've got to keep holding on to that. Do we have mutual growth and shared values?
Yes.
And in a relationship, it can so easily become one person that wants to go this way and it doesn't speak to their collective values. Like when you put A and B together, what are their collective values? Do you want to operate within the safe space, or do you want to just go to a missioning there, which is completely not within the value system of the relationship? And that does get dangerous. If you haven't gone together and said, okay, I really want to grow in this, it still serves us in this way. I really want to grow in this, it still serves us in this way. Okay, does that work for us?
Yeah.
And we need to keep considering that as in a company, because as much as we say differentiate, still bring in your special, if you're going to completely start doing something different to actually move away from the company, that's not going to build your relationship, right?
Right, yeah.
So this is a delicate dance.
It really, really is. Now let's get into your next point, Marizanne.
Number 6, second last one, is all around narratives and perceptions management. But when we think about narratives, I also want us to think about stories and storytelling. So in our personal relationship, a relationship is shaped by the story people tell themselves. And so if you see someone that's always letting you down, is never remembering anything, you'll filter everything they do through that lens.
Yeah.
If you view a relationship as growing and you focus on the progress and on creative problem solutions, you're gonna see the relationship like that. Okay, so the stories we tell ourselves, really important. But also sharing stories, really important. John Gottman especially focused on the idea of love maps. Stories you know about each other and stories you can tell each other to create that deeper connection, because really creating shared meaning is one of those things that John Gottman really focuses on and accentuates in his writings. In a corporate sense, of course, we understand that companies and leaders must shape narratives around their brand, culture, value. If you don't, employees, customers, and competitors will do it for you, and bottom-up culture creation can be a problem for you. So we understand why storytelling is important there. It's about creating culture, but also storytelling is a key leadership trait. Being able to be strong at storytelling makes you a more effective leader. We know, of course, what needs to lead the story. It is this strategy. It needs to be aligned.
Yes.
So I did want to focus on the importance of sharing stories and how we share stories for us to build relationships.
Now you mentioned love mapping, right? I want to get into it a little bit more in terms of like actual relationships. What does that look like, right? Because I think in a business sense, it's very much the leader comes and establishes the story, and everybody else buys into it. There is a very clear path in terms of like, this is what we're doing here, and then people find value in that, and it's like, oh, I want to be a part of that. But in a relationship between two people, what does that look like?
So love mapping. So it's a process of deeply getting to know the other person, their values, their interests, their goals, their emotional world, building trust, building rapport, deeper connection, whether it is with your partner or your colleagues.
Yeah.
We want to understand each other's career goals, each other's motivations, because in business, that means you can be a better leader to them. Both people feel more valued and loyal, but the same in a relationship. You can have someone's back so much more if you know what makes them tick, what works for them, what doesn't, what they would do if they won a lot of money in the lotto, what their priorities are for the next 5 years. You're just so much more connected.
Yeah. I think my follow-up question to that then is like, how do you do that without sounding like an interview? Because I think in a business, you absolutely can just hand out questionnaires and be like, hey, everybody, let's chat about this. We're trying to move in this direction. Tell us what you think, or tell us what you're looking to have us implement. But in a relationship, how do you make that not sound like an interview? Because You very much would be like, yeah, tell me what your goals are for the next 5 years. And then it's like, but that's not.
I think be really upfront about the fact that it's a love mapping exercise. If
Okay.
you read 7 Principles That Make Marriage Work, I think it is, by John Gottman, you'll see there's a lot of questions around love mapping. Love mapping really gets extensively explained and gives you a lot of questions to work through together. So see it as a cozy date night thing, because it is really fun, and you just 2 or 3 questions per evening, because you really get into discussing those and connecting over those and dreaming, because you're creating a future together and you're understanding how your futures lock in together. So I would really suggest that book. Because the love mapping section is super detailed. And you just say, no, we're going to discuss, here's the questions, slowly work through them over the next 3 months. No pressure. It's for fun time. It's our fun dream time together.
That's a cool tip. And I think we will link that book in the description for anybody that is interested in sort of doing that activity together. But we have one more point left, yes?
Let's
get
the
into
law
that.
of diminishing emotional returns. So in our personal relationship, we know the first time someone does something nice to you, it's amazing. It feels so special. But by the 10th time, you might barely notice it, or you're like getting quite used to it. It's now sort of a precedent that's been set. So relationships do require novelty, surprise, and intentional appreciation. Stay fresh and engaging. Now, that intentional appreciation for me is especially important, because we do go through periods in relationships when we're not able to be as novel. Like you can't just go buy a new outfit or do your fresh hair, because there's school fees to be paid, there's running club fees, there's this, there's that, there's a lot going, and you're feeling really depleted. So how in times like that, when you don't have a lot of spice you can add to the dish, how do you show intentional appreciation? Which does bring us to love languages, doesn't it? Like, how does that person understand your appreciation? And that's a whole other rabbit hole. But that's important, that intentional appreciation in a new way that seems new, that isn't just like, yeah, you thank me today, cool, whatever. Because I don't hear it anymore. Unfortunately, there's a diminishment in how much it means. In corporate or in business, of course, same thing. So companies may rely on certain rewards, incentives, or marketing tactics that through time will lose its impact. So companies, employees, and partners need periodic reinvention. It might be new experiences, new ways of recognizing them, strategic change to remain engaged and loyal. The same incentive scheme you had 4 years ago no longer is interesting. It's part of the background. What else? What's new? What's fresh? A change freshens minds and hearts when you do it.
And I think a great example of something like that happening is actually with like how with media events, right? So I'll go to media events and engage with some of like the media people, just like have casual conversations. And a lot of them will say like companies don't refresh what goes in the goodie bag, because I think on the back end, it's like when you're not on the receiving end of the goodie bag, it's like, yeah, we can throw in what we threw in last year, but these people don't necessarily, yes, they go to a lot of events, but they also notice what goes into the goodie bag. They keep stock of like who did what. And the sentiment genuinely from one guy that stuck with me was, he said there was a year where a company gave them jackets. They had a winter event and they gave them like these winter jackets. And he still has his and he still wears it because it was such a great gift and it was so well thought out. And I think that is the thing, is like you need to keep refreshing to stay top of mind, and that is like a corporate example, but do you perhaps have an example of that in like romantic relationships as well, or in like personal relationships, like how you refresh your appreciation?
Wow. It could be something as simple as what we call the boyfriend call. When you've been in a relationship for a while, you'll speak to each other in the morning and you'll speak to each other in the afternoon after work. You won't have that like catch-up call necessarily in the middle of the day where you say, well, I'm traveling. I just wanted to give you a boyfriend call to be like, how you doing? What's happening in your day? What's exciting? The things you used to do where every day when you were dating and forget later on in marriage because you're so busy with everything that's going on. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty cheap, easy way to just stand out and jump out and change someone's day. Intentional appreciation is those small things we notice about what the other person likes and getting them something on the way back home, or just making things just the way they like it at home, which doesn't cost any money.
Yeah.
So those small things, but we got to also think about, where do I really surprise my partner? Where do I go, you know what, I know this is so your vibe and so not my vibe, but I'm going to come into your world and connect. And that can also be that's really important.
I think that's actually a really good tip. Yeah. Thanks for that, Marizanne. And thank you for those 7 key principles as well. I think there was a lot of value shared in that. And I think you went a lot deeper than like what you would typically be finding if you just went and you searched up like what makes relationships thrive and how can I like sort of build a more successful relationship. So that was awesome. And before we close off, we just want to get to know a little bit about the women behind the business and counseling. You have a wide array of hobbies, and dancing is one of them. Do you have a specific genre of music that you like to dance to?
It's almost everything I'll dance to. I do like poppy things as well. Things with a good beat, things with some good bass. I think everyone can dance more. So yeah, just dancing to anything that's really easy to dance to. Unfortunately, because I've got 2 young kids, I'm having to dance to a lot of genres that really only apply to my 6-year-old. A lot of crazy frog coming through, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness. But I mean, it's a nice change from, just adult music. It's nice. I mean, I had fun dancing to Baby Shark with my little cousin, so.
There we go. A lot of that. Not enough, deep, bassy options for me going on.
Now, when your degree is finished and your business is all settled, what is next for you?
Right. So, a lot of time on fully establishing the practice this year, getting a permanent space, and then I want to be involved with my 2 boys' lives as much as possible. I want a lot of time for them in nature. I love them getting to know the African bush, animals, languages, the language of nature. I do have a short course or 2 that I want to still do this year before I go into my fully just commit to my master's the whole time. In between, I want to manage that. And I, just love going to beautiful spaces in nature. Considering a heritage trip to where I was born. I love the sea and getting back to the sea every year. Vitamin C is a must. Maybe some trips to the Free State as well.
Awesome. Now, Marizanne, before I let you go, I would love to play a round of hot takes with you. How it works is I'm going to give you a series of rapid fire questions, and you're just going to answer hot or not depending on how you feel about the topic. Cool. Don't be nervous. It's just light questions. How do you feel about a guided nature walk?
Oh, must.
Okay.
Coaching and mentoring, a must.
Yes. How do you feel about astrology?
Enjoy it. Always curious. Interesting.
Yes. It's a little something to get into.
Enjoy it. We're here. We're humans. Enjoy the experience.
Yes. How do you feel about limiting screen time?
Key, especially in relationships. But screen time can also give you so much access to knowledge and information. So double-edged sword.
Now you're also a reader. How do you feel about reading communities like Book Talk?
Love books. More in love with audiobooks currently.
Okay.
Looking forward to having time to read again one day, because always an avid reader, have had to go to audiobooks because of all the studying. Looking forward to somewhere in my late 40s having time to read again.
Yeah, no, I think there's just something about a physical book that just does it.
The smell.
Not the smell. Are you a book sniffer?
Love the smell.
How do you feel about cave diving?
Cage diving, shark cage diving, or any cage diving. Ooh,
Any cage diving, really.
claustrophobic.
Ooh, okay. How do you feel about sharing your password with a partner?
My past?
Your password, like your phone password. How do you feel about sharing phone passwords with partners?
Cool.
Okay. How do you feel about love bombing?
Depends on whether there's a negative intention behind it.
Okay. There is positive love bombing.
It's like being loved a lot.
Okay. I like that
It's
perspective.
just loving a lot. That's cool. But love bombing with that intention to, to be manipulative and abusive or whatever afterwards, not so nice.
Yeah. How do you feel about cat cafes?
Cat cafes.
Mhm.
Ooh, important for mental health, but not so much for allergies. So
True.
pop an Allergex before you go in and do it.
True, actually. And how do you feel about activity-based dates?
Oh, love it. I
Mm.
mean,
And matchmakers, how do you feel about them?
love a good yenta. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that brings me to the end of the hot takes questions, Marizanne. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you'll please link your social media and maybe your website so that anybody that is looking to get some counseling for you or just look a little bit more into what you're getting up to can find you.
Yeah, sure. I'm going to give you my
Mhm.
www.lovecounsel.co.za. And on Instagram, I can be found at Marizanne_Naested_counseling. But we'll definitely have to link that because that surname is a
Yes.
lot.
Yes. No, we will have all of that linked in the description box for everybody to find. But thank you so much for joining us today and giving us those 7 key principles. That was awesome. And thank you for tuning in as well.
Thank you, InnoStation.
Bye.
Now,